Three Venezuelan warships tried to stop a U.S. aircraft carrier. And what happened next will absolutely shock you. Picture this: the vast, open Caribbean Sea. This story has been floating around the internet for years, often presented with dramatic headlines and intense music. It usually claims that the Venezuelan ships boldly ordered the American carrier to change course, threatening to enforce their country's territorial waters. The U.S. commander, in this popular version of the story, calmly replies with a list of his overwhelming firepower, and the Venezuelan boats have no choice but to back down, completely humiliated. It's a gripping tale of naval bravado and a clash of nations. But is it true? Did this incredible standoff actually happen? Well, we're going to dive deep into this story, separate the facts from the fiction, and uncover what really went down in the Caribbean Sea. Stick with me, because the truth is just as interesting, and it tells us a lot about modern naval power, international relations, and how stories can take on a life of their own online. First, let's look at the context. The relationship between the United States and Venezuela has been tense for decades, so it's not entirely out of the question that their navies might have a less than friendly encounter. Tensions often play out on the seas, with navies testing each other's boundaries and resolve. This is what makes the story so believable to many people. The specific incident that this legend is based on likely took place in 2008. At that time, the USS George Washington was indeed on a journey around South America. It was en route from Norfolk, Virginia, to its new home port in Yokosuka, Japan. This journey, known as the Partnership of the Americas, involved goodwill visits and joint exercises with several Latin American navies. However, Venezuela was not on the list of partners. So we have the main players in the right place at the right time. The USS George Washington was in the Caribbean. The Venezuelan Navy was patrolling its own waters. So, did they cross paths in a dramatic showdown? The popular story goes something like this. The Venezuelan patrol boats approached the massive U.S. carrier and hailed it on the radio. They supposedly said, "We are the Venezuelan Navy. We order you to divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid entering our territorial waters." The American commander, Unflappable, is said to have replied calmly, "This is the captain of the USS George Washington, a 100,000-ton American aircraft carrier. We are accompanied by two guided missile cruisers, two destroyers, and 4 submarines. We are also supported by the entire U.S. Atlantic Fleet. I suggest you divert your course 15 degrees to the north." After that, a long silence, followed by the Venezuelan commander meekly saying, "Aye, aye, sir." Changing course. It's a fantastic story. It's got tension, a great comeback line, and a clear winner and loser. It's the kind of thing that makes for a perfect internet meme or a viral post. But here's the reality check. This exact exchange is almost certainly a myth. It's a modern naval urban legend, an adaptation of a much older, equally famous, but also fictional story. You might have heard it before. It's often called the lighthouse and the battleship joke. In that story, a massive battleship demands a smaller light on the horizon change course. The smaller light refuses. The battleship captain gets angry, lists all his firepower, and again demands the other vessel change course. The final reply is, "This is a lighthouse. Your call." This joke has been circulating since at least the 1930s and has been attributed to various navies over the years: American, British, Spanish, you name it. What likely happened is that someone took this classic naval joke and updated it for the 21st century, swapping the lighthouse for Venezuelan patrol boats and the generic battleship for the very real USS George Washington. The political tensions between the US and Venezuela provided the perfect believable backdrop. So, if the dramatic dialogue is fake, did anything happen at all? It's possible there was a minor interaction. Naval vessels from different countries communicate all the time. It's standard procedure. The Venezuelan ships may have indeed hailed the US carrier group as it passed near their waters. They might have exchanged information about their identity, course, and speed. This is routine seamanship, done to avoid collisions and misunderstandings. But a demand to change course and a threat? Highly unlikely. International maritime law is very clear. The USS George Washington would have been exercising its right of innocent passage through the area, as long as it stayed outside of Venezuela's 12 nautical mile territorial sea. The carrier group would have been well aware of these boundaries, and would have planned its route accordingly. Professional navies, even those of rival nations, generally operate with a high degree of professionalism to avoid escalating minor encounters into major conflicts. Think about the real-world implications. If Venezuelan patrol boats genuinely tried to force a US carrier strike group to change course, it would have been a massive international incident. It wouldn't just be a funny story on the internet. It would have been front-page news worldwide. There would have been official statements from the Pentagon and the Venezuelan Ministry of Defense. Diplomats would have been summoned. The fact that there are no official records, no news reports from reputable sources, and no statements from either government about such a confrontation is the biggest piece of evidence that it simply didn't happen as described. The real story is not about a military showdown, but about the power of storytelling. The myth persists because it taps into certain feelings. For some, it's a story of American strength and resolve. For others, it might be seen as a tale of American arrogance. It's simple, it's dramatic, and it confirms a particular worldview, which makes it very easy to share without checking the facts. Let's talk a little more about the actual ships involved. The 3 Venezuelan ships are often identified as patrol boats. The Venezuelan Navy does operate several classes of offshore patrol vessels, like the Guacamocuto class. These are capable ships, around 80 meters long, armed with a 76mm main gun, cannons, and machine guns. They are designed to patrol a country's exclusive economic zone, fight smuggling, and conduct search and rescue. They are perfectly respectable naval vessels. But comparing them to a Nimitz-class carrier is like comparing a motorcycle to a freight train. The USS George Washington is not just a ship, it's a sovereign piece of American territory. Its power isn't just in its own size, but in its entire carrier strike group. The cruisers and destroyers that accompany it are armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and the world's most advanced air defense systems. The carrier's own air wing includes A-18 Super Hornets, Growler electronic warfare aircraft, and Hawkeye early warning planes. Any real confrontation would not have been a conversation. It would have been a non-event. The US carrier group would have detected the Venezuelan boats from hundreds of miles away. It would have known their exact position, speed, and course long before they were even visible on the horizon. The idea that 3 small patrol boats could somehow surprise or stop a US carrier is, from a military standpoint, completely nonsensical. So, in the end, what really happened? The USS George Washington sailed through the Caribbean. It may have been observed by the Venezuelan Navy. There may have been a standard, professional radio communication. And that's it. The dramatic story of a tense standoff is a fantastic piece of fiction. A modern sea story born from an old joke and fueled by political tensions and the power of the internet. It serves as a great reminder to always be skeptical of amazing stories you see online, especially when they fit a little too perfectly into a pre-existing narrative. The reality of naval operations is often less about dramatic confrontations and more about careful navigation, professionalism, and adherence to international law. The real power is often demonstrated not by making loud threats, but by silent, overwhelming presence. So, the next time you see a headline about a tiny navy standing up to a superpower, take a moment to dig a little deeper. The true story is often more complex and, in its own way, more fascinating than the myth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into naval history and myth busting, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another story. Let me know in the comments what other military myths you'd like me to investigate. See you next time.